So, hello and welcome to episode number 6 of the Zebra Talk, and today we're back to sim racing. But before we actually get to our guest, let's bring in Alex, as always, of course, joining me here. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think, were you traveling today? Did you travel back yesterday? Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, either way, of course, not about the two of us, but, of course, all about our guest today. Of course, joined by Phillippe Denes. How are you doing? I mean, it's not evening there yet, right? You were, yeah, West Coast. Cool. I mean, in general, tell us about yourself. You are a hybrid racer. You do both sim racing and also real life racing. And at the same time, you also race across sims, right?
Wow, that's a great idea. So let's do it. And ever since then, I couldn't stop racing. And I kind of came back to sim racing more seriously when I got into real racing. And at the end of 2019, I got a really nice simulator from one of my real life sponsors. And I just decided to go to work. And here we are now, BS competition with BMW Motorsports. It's been a pretty awesome ride so far.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, yeah, mentioning BS competition, I think that's a good place to start as we are here live on the BS competition channel. How did you come to be part of BS competition, or yeah, how did the whole becoming a racer for BS competition thing go for you?
Well, prior to BS competition, I raced on Vendaval Sim Racing, and we started to get some really good results. And one of my teammates currently, Nathan Lewis, reached out to me saying, hey, the team has some interest in you, and it was an offer I couldn't refuse, so I had to take it. And I came over with my good friend Mikkel Gade, and we started to get good results over here, and it's been home ever since.
So, I mean, you, of course, said that you were into racing straight from the get-go, sim racing, or at least playing racing games from a very, very young age as well. What was the point in getting you started? Was it your dad? Was it anybody else in the family who kind of pushed you into that? Or was it just general interest in cars?
Yeah, my dad has always had an interest in cars, and he loved Formula One. We watched Formula One every time it was on, and I grew up in the Michael Schumacher era, so this guy to me was like my hero. And I watched Formula One probably since didn't even know what was going on all the way up until now. So I know a lot about Formula One. I know the history of it, and that was kind of what got me started. And the racing games added on, and then I kind of clicked with me that Formula One racers started in karting. So that's what kind of came to the question. I was like, when I asked my dad, can I start racing go-karts?
Yeah, I mean, go-karts, I think for many racers are like the first step into real world racing, aside from, of course, starting with games as you did, as you said. So yeah, how did that development go for you? Like, what was the next step, or what was karting like, and then what was the next step for you? And yeah, maybe just walk us through your racing history in a way.
Yes, it's pretty funny. So when I first started practicing in a go-kart, I got a go-kart, and I went to a few racing schools, and the further I got into practicing, I was getting faster and faster, but I had this like terrible fear of being on track with like a lot of carts. My dad and I went to a go-kart track like an hour and a half away from my house, and we showed up, and there was like 40, 50, 60 carts, which at that time for me was way too much. I said, Dad, I don't know if I can do this. Let's turn around, let's go home. And that's what we did. And next time it happened, I just said I can't make my dad drive me all the way here again and do the same thing over. So I just decided to go out, and it was perfectly fine. And fast forward a couple more years, I'm ranked top 5 in the country and on one of the best teams, having time of my life. And I think it was 2015, I drove a Formula car racing school for the first time here at Laguna Seca, which is actually 2 minutes from my sim. And it was awesome. And after that, 2016, I made my debut in Formula 1600, which is like the first big step from a go-kart to a Formula car.
All right, so yeah, I read about the fact that you are close to Laguna Seca. What's it like being so close to a racetrack, and especially a racetrack that has a history as Laguna Seca does as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, I guess, part of my chapter as well. Is I went to Laguna Seca growing up as a kid. My dad is a doctor, so he was a voluntary doctor out at the track. And we got free tickets to every event pretty much, and I got to see Champ Car back in the day, MotoGP. I saw like the big battles with Valentino Rossi and Casey Stoner. I saw Nicky Hayden win here. It was, I've seen all sorts of things, and it kind of just makes you love racing even more.
I mean, that's like the perfect upbringing or access to racing that early, and free tickets even better. I mean, I can only imagine that had a big part of or to do with you being so interested in it. Are there any other sports you're watching, or is it just racing? Because it sounded like it's just, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's 2 wheels or 4, but it sounds like racing is really the thing you watch.
Kind of like, I do watch a lot of cycling and track and field because it's kind of in the same realm of competitiveness. It's always fighting to be the best, and that's kind of what I love about these sports. And I mean, Tour de France is going on right now, and my favorite rider is winning, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really into cycling too much, but we of course did a little bit of a research phase as well into this. Not a whole lot, but something we did find as well is that you were into swimming as well, or are into swimming. I mean,
yeah.
You had a lot to kind of balance, it seems like, at least when you were coming up. How do you even manage if go to school, race at a high level, and then also you're pretty far up when it comes down to swimming?
Yeah, well, it was more of when I was still growing up. I started out running a lot. Like I would run with my mom or dad every day until I started to get really fast, and I kind of just grew out of it, and I started to do swimming. Well, my dad made me do swimming lessons at like this place by my house, and it turned out that they were like really good for training Olympians, and I was there for almost, I think, 2-3 years, just swimming 5 times a week, and I started to get really good at that too. And I kind of just burnt out. They pushed me too hard, and it just wasn't for me. I still love swimming, but I couldn't do the competitive stuff. And kind of when I called it quits on swimming is right when I made the switch to racing, and I never really looked back. But I'll still go out and swim, every other day and get the muscles moving.
Yeah, I think it's always important to have like maybe more physical way of yeah, just doing stuff and not just sitting behind the wheel, but also treating your body right. So most of the drivers we've talked to have also been doing sports in one way or another, like active, not behind the wheel sports, you know what I mean? But the thing is, for you, it's not just the racing behind, or I mean, both of them are behind the wheel. But let's switch over to sim racing maybe, because for us it was really interesting because we had Laurin Heinrich on and Angus Fender. Both of them are also hybrid racers, which do both. And we asked all of them the same question. Like for you, what's the biggest difference when it comes to racing in a real car and in a sim rig?
Well, simply it's the feeling of being in a race car. You can feel, you know, the engine roaring. You can feel G-forces when you're going through a corner. The response from a car is much more natural. You can feel everything that it's telling you that it wants to do. When on a sim rig, it's not exactly the same. And I guess to me, that's the biggest difference. And also having to just adapt from one to the other very quickly is not so easy. So I know there's a lot of race car drivers in the real world that refuse to sim race because they think it's going to, you know, mess with them and it'll never be the same. But I think it's better to be able to adapt from one thing to the other faster than it is to not do it at all.
And actually, I think with the other guys as well, we talked about the fact that maybe being a sim racer first sometimes also just says, okay, well, you can push it a little bit further. Of course, if you're in a real car, if you crash, then you're crashed, and it is always expensive when it comes down to it. In a sim rig, all you do is reset and everything's fine. Of course, in races, you still kind of carry that burden that, yes, you might have a DNF in there or just a massive delay if you're no longer race, but at the same time, I mean, that financial burden isn't connected to it. Do you think that there might even be an advantage sometimes for sim racers just being able to push it that inch further?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one of my big problems in real racing is that, you know, the budget is so big and normally you can't even reach that budget that you need, and so you're kind of just trying to survive. And you know, in the back of your head, if you don't have the budget, there's always I don't want to crash, I can't crash, or things like that, and that can really restrict you from reaching your full potential. And on sim racing, you never have to worry about that. You always just step over the limit in sim racing to find the limit. So it's something you can't really do in real life. Technically you could, but it's not the smartest idea.
It gets expensive.
Yeah, I think
very
that's
quick.
that's exact. It's expensive and also super risky. Like in the sim, as you said, you can go like from the extreme and then try to lower it till you find the point that's working every time. But in real life, I think you have to really, yeah, just inch closer, but from the other direction without risking too much. So I think that's a huge difference. At the same time, I think, or what the other guys also told us, that it can be super useful sim racing, especially just to get a first impression when you're like trying for a new track or something. Just, I mean, you can essentially do infinite laps and just get the training in and get a feel for the track. Have you done that before?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I will come and drive a track before a real race on iRacing, do a bunch of laps just to get the track embedded in my brain. Of course, the brake zones and the car and everything's going to handle different, but it's always good to have the track fresh in your memory.
I think one part there as well is, of course, when you're actually at a track and have the chance to, of course, walk it as well ahead of the race. How much does basically taking in minor things in a track walk compare to then, of course, learning a track properly in a sim rig, of course, as well? Is there kind of a need, of course, to do both, or could you also say that sometimes just learning the layout when you're there can also be an option if it is just testing days, or how does that go?
I think both is definitely the best way to go. I have a pretty good story of one of my good friends from racing. We were at Toronto Street Course and rode to Indy, and we all drove the track on R Factor, and the last corner was on that game like a fast sweeping corner, almost full throttle, and we all walked the track except I think one of my friends, and I was behind him in the first practice session on the out lap, the very first lap out of the pits, and we come through the last corner. I knew it was a lot tighter in real life because we walked the track, and my friend just like tried to carry too much speed on the first lap and just destroyed the wall right away, because this is a street course, right? So there's nowhere to go if you're testing out the waters.
Was he good at least after that, or did
he
properly walk away from it,
not.
or okay? Crap. I mean, that's definitely an eye opener if then you don't actually. I'm actually surprised about that, because I would reckon, especially on street courses, you would do so much more on a track walk.
Yeah, I guess, but it didn't click with his brain.
So, yeah, I think that's the perfect example, this story, that you should do both definitely, and not just rely on the sim racing experience, I guess.
But iRacing still, is much more. All the tracks are laser scanned, so they're going to be very accurate.
Yeah, nice. Another thing that I found really interesting was, I think it was Lauren that said this, that one of the problems you can have with sim racing is that you have this potentially infinite training time ahead of races. Like in real life, you have set days and that's it. But in sim racing, you could theoretically, I mean, just sit down for, I don't know, 80 hours a week if you really focus on it. But that can also be a problem. How do you do that to find the right balance between, okay, this is how much I have to train, and this is how much I could train, but I have to find the perfect value in there to not overdo it?
It's hard to say, it changes each week, but if you're going to be putting in 30 plus hours a week on just driving and setup, it's a lot mentally, because you're driving so much, focusing everything you have, trying to get faster. And there reaches a point for most people where you can't really improve anymore. You just are running laps just to run laps, trying to find something. And at that point, it's so easy to get lost in your brain thinking, oh, I keep messing this up. And then after a while, you'll just be making mistakes left and right rather than actually being where you want to be. So it's important sometimes to take a break and kind of refresh and come back. I don't like to do too many hours for a race, but sometimes it's necessary if you really want a good result. And especially mentally, you want to be focusing all the time to not be making big mistakes.
Yeah, I think one part as well that might also be interesting, of course, you already mentioned it, setup is always a part in sim as well, I think in normal racing as well. How does that go for you? How much time do you spend, learning a track? Do you already adapt setup whilst you're learning the track, or do you say, okay, well, I'm first going into just perfecting the track and then setup? Is it the other way around? How does that kind of go?
I think ideally you would want to learn the track first with some baseline setup that you would have or something like that, and just get comfortable with the car and the track and how it feels. And then from there on, once you kind of understand where the car is at, you can start to make some more adjustments and hope that your setup will be the best one. But it's very difficult these days with some of these very strong teams, putting in, like I said, the 30 hours a week and have 10 guys doing it at the same time. and it's really hard to find that motivation for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't have that kind of time either when we're not full-time sim racers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, if you can't do full time, it's always really hard to if the competition is doing full time. But yeah, talking about time, maybe let's talk about you a bit more. So you said you're not a full-time sim racer, but maybe you can run us through like a regular Phil Denes week, maybe.
Well, you know, I'll go to the gym here and there, hang out with my girlfriend pretty much every day, every other day. At night and during the day, I'll be here most of the time, you know, putting in work. That's pretty much it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that COVID also restricted a bunch of that. I'm not sure how the numbers are currently at in the States. From what I've basically seen online, it does seem very, very relaxed over there, although I think that California was always a little bit more strict when it came down to it. But not getting into the current restrictions or politics too much. How's it been for you racing-wise? Of course, everybody has been affected by it. What were your plans pre-COVID? What have they developed into now?
Well, pre-COVID, I was actually in St. Petersburg, Florida, with the Road to Indy, and I was going to debut with one of the best teams in the grid. And we did practice one, and we were about to get in the cars for qualifying, and they canceled the whole weekend. So that's where COVID started, and that's kind of where I decided to put everything into sim racing, because there's nothing else I can do. And once things started to reopen up and racing kind of started going again, my team couldn't even come to the States. So, because they were all Italian, and I was kind of boned for that season. And, you know, the budget is just so much for real racing that it's hard to always find the money to do a full season. So I'm still trying to find a solid ride for either finishing out this season or next season.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say best of luck, of course, on that end. But I think that's, yeah, it's really like COVID was terrible for most of real life sports. I mean, even us from the, like Tyler and me from the esports world, we also felt it. Like, if you have no offline competitions going on, it's going to be hard for a lot of people in different fields. So, yeah, I mean, let's just hope that... I mean, hopefully next year everything will be back to normal. But yeah, talking about normal, like, I mean, that was the worst bridge I ever did. Let's just talk about the games you do. Because Flo told me in advance that you got us the first World X R Factor victory with BS Competition, but usually you do iRacing. Yeah, maybe just let's just talk about the difference between the single sim titles we have.
Yeah, in my opinion, iRacing is by far the best one out there right now. They've just been in the business for so long, and kind of just the whole layout of iRacing is just almost perfect, you know, the way they have the ranking system and so on. But R Factor is really close, and actually R Factor is used more for like professional sims, like, you know, out of a shop, you know, where they have your, I don't even know how to describe it, you know, the full motion sim with most realistic everything you could have, and that's what R Factor is really known for. But yeah, I did the World EX race, and I wasn't that ready for it, actually, and as the practice went on, I kind of got more comfortable, and next thing I knew, in one of the races I found myself in second, and the leader made a mistake, and I finished like the semifinal in first, and I kind of just hung on to the first place in the final and the super final somehow, and it was a bit of a surprise for me, but it was pretty awesome. I had to wake up at 3 in the morning for that race, so it was well worth.
Yeah, I mean, one thing there as well, I think, is that, of course, whilst you do have a lot of the kind of racing events that are within your own region in sim racing, I've also noticed a bunch of times as well that sometimes you do have races based in Europe where there's basically drivers from all around. Usually in esports, ping is always a big issue there. How does that transfer into the sim racing world?
Yeah, maybe on like some of the games it would hurt me a lot, but in iRacing it hasn't been too bad so far. I've had some, small incidents, but nothing too bad. But the time zone is really what hurts me. I think pretty much every single person around the world for big races has time to wake up and, prepare 2-3 hours before the race and get everything ready. When I wake up at 5 in the morning, shove some breakfast down and drive to the sim and half awake still, it's not that easy.
I mean, I can imagine, it's hard when your whole like sleep schedule and everything is messed up. I mean, I can only talk from experience when Tyler and me do casting for events in NA, and those times are usually also really painful because you get to the studio when the sun goes down and you walk out when the sun comes up, and the next week is going to be terrible sleep schedule wise. So I can totally feel that problem, so to say. But at the same time, I have a huge amount of respect for you for doing that, and also managing to get good results, even though you have that kind of handicap, I would say. But yeah, I mean, talking about races, what are the next races you will be doing? Do you have anything lined up in the future?
In the real world or sim racing?
We can do both.
Well, real world, we're still working on it, but sim racing, I have the Sports Car Open this weekend on Saturday, and we are currently 4th in the championship, which is great. It's one of the strongest fields we've seen in a long time in sim racing, and I think 4th place is a really great accomplishment, and I think we can keep it up for the next 3 rounds.
All right, so of course, when it comes down to real racing, you've basically said that, yeah, you're working on getting a new seat. What was your kind of first season into it? Like, what was your first like proper ride out of cars? It was into the Formula, right?
Yeah, it was in F1600 and here in the States, and I finished 3rd in that championship my first year in cars, and right after that, that's kind of when we realized what we were getting ourselves into, and I started, picking races to do here and there, which ones would be best, and I kind of started going up the ladder slowly, but I got into, it's called Indy Pro 2000, which is the third step on the road to Indy below IndyCar, and I went to Europe as well. I did some GT stuff here and there, but last full season was 2019 in Indy Pro 2000, and we were on a low budget team, but it was still a pretty good season. I qualified 3rd at one of the rounds, and it was a solid season.
Was it all just open wheel racing as well, or did you do some normal cars as well?
Yeah, almost all of it was Formula Car, except 2018 I did some sports car stuff over in Europe, and I was at Barcelona and Zandvoort and Silverstone. I drove those tracks and some sports cars.
Well, you definitely have a lot of experience racked up, it seems. You're only 22, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, nice. But yeah, talking about experience, I saw on your homepage that you also like you offer that people can rent your sim setup, and you also offer coaching. Uh, is there an audience for that? How does that go?
Yeah, the renting the sim thing in person has never really happened because of COVID and everything. But
Hmm.
the coaching itself, yeah, I do that pretty much every week. I'll be coaching a couple guys here and there, and trying to teach them what I know, and hope to one day see them competing against me.
Yeah, I mean, you said earlier as well that basically you wake up, grab some breakfast, and then drive over to the Sims. So the Sim isn't at your house. You like have a whole space for that, or what?
Yeah, I have a garage 2 minutes from Laguna Seca that my
All right.
old sponsor from racing still pays for, and he's kind of supporting this little thing right now, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have led with something like that. It's like, yeah, like I have my own little, basically my own car in garage where I can just jump into any car that you want. It's always interesting because I mean, how's that worked out as well when it comes down to work-life balance? Is usually, I mean, you would say that if you're at home, you might not be able to get out of that sim world as easily as, for example, if you do have your own space for it.
Yeah, I think it helps. It just helps put a lot more work into it, you know. I mean, sometimes it would be nice to have it at home, and when I wake up early in the mornings, I can just hop on there instead of having to, get ready and go through the whole process. But it's really nice to just have my own place and be able to focus strictly on this when I'm here and not have to worry about any external factors.
Yeah, I think it can also be super helpful to really have a clear separation between work time and free time, and like not just separating it by hours, but also by space, can be really helpful. I think like it's like going to the office in a way. So okay, this is work time. I put into this, and then when you get home, I think it's also good for the mind that you don't even have the chance to just I'm just gonna do a few more laps or something. So it's just okay, the day is done in a way. Yeah, I mean, Tyler, should we pick some questions from the chat maybe?
Sure. I mean, I did already see one, and I think it is from a fellow colleague as well.
Yes.
Which Elias, I think, asked who was your favorite BS Plus iRacer at some stage.
My favorite BS Plus iRacer, Elias Sepinen, man. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah,
didn't
well,
really
so we
get
got
too
that
many, did
answer.
we?
No, we didn't get too many questions, but I just didn't want to keep them waiting much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another question from Elias, which was, what is your opinion on BS Plus iRacer? He wrote Alex Voss, but I think it's Alex Voss, right?
Yeah. Alex. I mean, he's a legend. What can I say? He's one of the best in the business, and simple as that.
I mean, in general, I think we do want to kind of get into the whole sim racing thing a little bit more. I've followed sim racing for quite a while. I've done a little bit of commentary work here on the side as well for RaceSpot. But apart from that, like, I haven't actually had the chance to, like, full on dive into like a whole season of like something in iRacing. It was always just kind of single events or single races when it came down to it, single like charity races and things like that. What is generally, if people are only going to be there to kind of follow one series or like two series, what are the things to watch if like people want to get into following the top tier of iRacing?
First of all, follow BS Competition because they'll tell you when we're doing our races. And second of all, the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup is the premier series in iRacing. It's the World Championship. If you like NASCAR, then watch the NASCAR World Championship on iRacing. I mean, each premier like World Championship in iRacing will always have the strongest field and the best drivers and the best action. So that's what I would recommend. But definitely BS Competition will tell you what we're doing.
Love it. Always love that promotion when Alex and I don't have to do it. But yeah, of course, I think for any of our live listeners right now or viewers right now, of course, everything is linked down below. I think we do have commands and timers for the different things to show up in chat as well. And for any of our audio listeners, just you can search for BS Competition and pretty much find us anywhere. But I think it is just BS Competition on all platforms. It is that on Twitch as well. So of course you could have listen to this, watch this live with our cameras and all, every Wednesday around 4:30, although we will probably go for a little bit of a break, I think, over the summer.
Yeah, I think we can announce that right now that we will do like a roughly 1 month break. Yeah, so the next few weeks we won't have a ZEBRAtalk because Tyler and me need to get some vacation time in.
Yeah,
but after that,
basically, I think our schedule are mostly around the CS calendar, and player break is coming up there. Basically, has started after this next coming weekend, and that's our best time to grab some vacation time as well. And it's summer, so of course, best time to go for the outdoors. Talking about outdoors and talking about vacation time, Phil, what's your go-to? Are you more of the city person, more of the nature person? I mean, you already live in California, so it's basically vacation any day, right?
Yeah. I think you gotta like a little bit of both, right? Sometimes you go on vacation, you want to experience, the mountains. You can go to Grand Canyon or, some spectacular place, Hawaii or something like that. Or you could go to a big city and, live the city life for a little bit. You can't really pick one, but I would have to pick nature more over city.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alex agrees on that point.
Definitely, I totally agree. And actually, like I've been to the Western US, and I've been to most of the national parks there, and it's just like breathtakingly beautiful nature. It's really, really great. I can highly recommend it. I mean, especially over the next month when travel will easen up a bit, and hopefully international travel will get easier. Go ahead, go visit. But yeah, this is not a show about nature, so let's talk about racing a bit more. I think it might be a good place to start our first right here, Tyler. Because we're always interested in how like these careers in racing come to be. So you already like gave us a little hint that you also started with some games. But what was the first game you ever played?
Oh man, first game I ever played. Okay, F1, Formula 1 2001. It was in the same game. They had both years in it, and it was on the PlayStation 1 or 2. 1 or 2. I remember it because that was the first game. I was at my cousin's house, or my uncle's house, and my cousin was playing this game and he showed it to me, and I think Formula 1 games were a lot cooler after I saw that.
Talking about Formula 1 games as well, it's F1 2021 release week. Have you touched it yet?
No, a couple of my friends have, and I've talked to a few friends about maybe starting a co-op career mode, because that's the first time they're ever doing that, and that seems kind of like maybe something that would be worth streaming.
Definitely. Yeah, to stick to our first for the moment, though, I mean, Alex already skipped into first game. I think we usually start with first console, but yeah, I mean, the order doesn't really matter. Either way, what was your first console? I'm guessing from the game it was the PlayStation 1?
No, that was my cousin's. I think I got a PlayStation. Actually, I got a GameCube first, and then PlayStation 2. Those were kind of, I can't remember which one was first, but GameCube or PlayStation 2. And I went up. I also had a Game Boy Advanced. You know, like the flip one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one of those too.
I always wanted one. And then the first one I got was the DS Lite at some stage when it had already been out for like 3 years. But not complaining.
But yeah, I think the racing was mainly on PS2.
Okay, yeah. So had you also already been kart racing at that point, or was it like the first racing yourself thing?
No, I was like 3 years old when I started playing,
Okay.
you know, all those games. So I was 11 when I started in a real kart.
So yeah, that's a lot of a lot of gaming hours between that and the first time in a real car, I guess, or the first kart. But yeah, going on with the first, I think we'll have to do virtual and real life with you as well, as you're also a hybrid racer. So, what was the first tournament you ever competed in? And yeah, what was the first in sim, and what was the first in real world?
The first real world race I had was at my local track, and I finished 4th, I think, out of like 6 guys.
Okay.
And yeah, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. It was just me and my dad. And then my first sim race, or my first big league or tournament in a sim, was the Road to Indy E-Series. So during COVID, the Road to Indy made their own little sim series, and I ended up winning the first one, and they did a second one, and I won that one as well.
So wait, that was your first series that you got into, and you just straight won it?
Yeah, that was my first.
Kind of ruins
fair,
our second question when it comes, or next question when it comes down to first as well.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, I've been sim racing since I was like, I guess with a wheel since I was like 12. So it's not like I haven't been doing it, but I got my first nice rig when I was at the end of 2019, so it hasn't been that long. And that's when I started to realize that I actually had potential in sim racing.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, yeah, Tyler already said it. The next question would have been, what was your first win? I mean, we can skip that now for sim racing, but yeah, what was the first real world racing win?
I had a couple of club race wins, so local stuff, but my first big win was in Lake Elsinore down south, and it was like one of the last races I was going to do on this go-kart. It was getting really old, and after about a year, some go-karts start to, you know, overextend, and we kind of just toss them because they don't work anymore. And this was pretty much my last race on this go-kart, and I was just hanging on for dear life. I was in 3rd, getting back to 5th, 6th, things like that, and I somehow got myself back into 3rd, just trying to survive. And the 2 leaders on the last lap hit each other, and they went wide, and I kind of just slid through on the inside, and I won the race. And my whole team was like so excited because there was no chance I was going to win on this go-kart. So it was a pretty cool first big win.
All right, so I mean, always I think great to hear and get some insights. When it comes down to, of course, you said your first kind of step into it was with your dad. Did your dad beat you on the first race, or were you immediately quicker?
My dad was already, well, I was 12, and my dad, you know, was 60 or whatever, and there's different categories, so he would have been in the Masters category,
right,
and I was the junior. But my dad only drove for the first year just for fun, and then kind of switched roles to being my mechanic.
So your dad was a doctor and
yeah,
mechanic.
Man can do everything.
Okay, I mean, he's like a proper dad, but like at a whole different level again.
Yeah, I'll be honest, he wasn't the best mechanic, but he could get the job done, at least.
Love it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're nearing the end of the show. Is there anything that you would like to tell the people listening, or maybe you can just plug your social channels or whatever?
Yeah, follow me on whatever you would like, and that's all I gotta say.
Cool. I mean, we'll go around the virtual room. We'll head on over to Schlaum. He can plug anything that he wants, and then we'll get to the end of the show.
I mean, you guys know us by now, so it's schlaumofficial anywhere, everywhere. And yeah, if anybody wants to set up a Phil with the race car for the next season, just go ahead and contact him. I think he well deserves it. So yeah, back to Tyler.
Great. So of course, yeah, it's this side. I'm so bad with this. Yeah. So it's tylerfeelin on Twitter and Instagram. It's feelincs on Twitch. And with that, of course, I hope that you guys enjoyed the show. This has been the 6th episode of the Zebra Talk, of course, as we already said, usually live every Wednesday from 1930 European time or Central European time. And with that, as Alex already said, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, but we'll be back then towards the end of August, and then hopefully with a bunch of new guests and maybe also a couple of changes here in the stream overlay. Until then, of course, we are planning on actually getting a couple of more streams going here with Zebra TV. Phil had already said before that he would be interested in streaming some of his own games. That, yet again, kind of on my part. I am kind of slow on that. I have had a bunch to do, but yeah, we'll get to that at some stage. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, of course, and we'll see you guys soon.